To Imaginary Lands, the works of award-winning author and storyteller Bobby Pell. Today's selection, Nicole's Nighttime Visitor, is an original fairy tale written by myself with the imaginative aid of my niece, Nicole. We blended a mysterious island adventure with trolls, fears of the dark, and a renewed sense of wonder for beings of the night. Do you dare?
Once upon a time, and not so very long ago, there lived an 8-year-old girl named Nicole. She had long blonde hair, a beautiful smile, and a wonderful imagination. She loved fairy tales filled with fanciful legends about kings and castles, fairies and magical creatures. Why, sometimes she could be quite the little princess herself. One summer morning, Nicole's parents told her that they were going on a trip to Ireland. She was so excited. They flew across the Atlantic Ocean and landed near the western coast. Their first stop was to see the Blasket Islands by ferry. Her parents drank hot coffee in the dining area while Nicole went to the observation deck. She looked for the island, but she only saw clouds. The captain walked up behind her. "The Blasket Islands are always surrounded with a mysterious mist, lassie. It leaves during the day, but returns again in the evening. I'll blow the fairy horn 3 times to let you know that it's time to return to the mainland. Have fun!" Soon the ferry was close enough that the mist parted. Nicole watched as the island suddenly appeared, rising tall out of the water with green rolling hills and high rocky cliffs. She met her parents down below, and their adventure began. During the day, Nicole and her parents took several walks with a tour guide, learning all about the small farming community that used to be on the island. There were still a few sheep dotting the grassy knolls that were covered in yellow bracken. They enjoyed a lovely picnic near one of the farmhouse ruins, then took a lazy nap in the afternoon sun. As it got later in the day, Nicole and her parents started making their way back down to the ferry. "Mommy, would it be all right if I go look for some pretty shells?" "Of course, Nicky," she said. "Just don't go too far. Listen for the fairy horn, and we'll meet you on the boat, okay?" "Oh, sure," said Nicole, and she wandered down to the beach, carrying a small pink bucket. She picked up a large white conch shell with blue and brown swirls, then some small pink shells that opened like butterfly wings. But the beautiful orange and purple starfish in a small tidal pool amazed her. It looked as if a rainbow had fallen from the sky just for her. She gathered so many shells that her bucket was soon quite heavy. She followed a path through a tunnel leading inside the cliff. She carefully scrambled over the slick rocks. Nicole saw bright green strands of seaweed hanging like tinsel from the walls. She did not hear the 3 blasts of the fairy's horn, signaling its departure. She finished collecting shells when her bucket was full. Soon the sun was beginning to set, and the tunnel was getting dark. "Oh, no! I hope the fairy hasn't left yet. I'd better hurry back." But as she turned, the pathway was full of water, for the tide was coming in. She slowly crept forward. "Hello? Is there anybody in here?" The only answer was her own echo. Nicole began to get scared. Not only was she alone in a strange place, but also she was very scared of the dark. All of a sudden she felt very small, but she kept on walking. Soon she saw a path with a faint glimmer of light. It came out onto a tiny ledge overlooking the tidal pool she had walked through earlier, but it was 15 feet high. "I can't jump down there. Oh, what am I going to do?" She sat on the ledge and looked out over the ocean. It was very dark because a storm was approaching. She knew that her parents would come back for her by morning, but for now she was stranded. She was so tired from the day that she leaned into the rock wall behind her and fell asleep. She rested for a little while until she was startled by a sudden noise. She opened her eyes. only to discover that a large pair of bright green eyes was staring back at her. She tried to back away from them, but knocked her head against the wall. "Ouch! Look what you made me do!" She rubbed the sore spot on the back of her head. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to scare you," he said. For standing in front of her was a strange-looking boy. At least he was the same size as a boy, with spiked brown hair, a large red nose, small round ears, and very large flat feet. He wore brown ragged shorts and a short-sleeved shirt the color of the midnight sky. Nicole didn't want him to know that she was frightened, so she asked, "Why were you staring at me? It's not polite." "I was just watching you sleep. You look so peaceful," he said. "Peaceful? Why, I've been scared half out of my wits." Nicole stood up and started pacing in circles. "Do you know what's happened to me? I was looking for shells when I got lost in the tunnel. Then the ferry took off without me, and boy, won't my parents be mad at me. And now I'm talking to... who am I talking to anyway?" "My name is Bracken," he said. He sat down, watching her still pace around him. "Well, Bracken, my name is Nicole. You look very different from the boys back home." "Maybe that's because I'm not a boy." "You're not? Then what are you?" He stood up beside her now, looking her right in the face. "Why, I am a troll, of course." "A troll?" she asked, staring at him intently. "Trolls only happen in fairy tales." "Well, what are you?" "Why, I'm a girl, silly." "A girl? Girls only happen in human tales." They each took a step closer to one another, squinting to get a better look, and started laughing. But then Nicole looked at the evening sky and began to tremble. "Whatever's the matter?" he said. "I can help you get back down if that's what you're worried about. I know all the tunnels, and I'm sure your parents will come back for you just as soon as they can," said Bracken. "Oh, sure. I know." Nicole sat down. She didn't want to tell Bracken the real problem. "Well, lass, if it's not the path or your parents, then what in the world's the matter?" She looked him straight in the eyes. "If we were friends, I could tell you. Will you be my friend?" "Of course I will." "Then pinky swear," said Nicole, holding out her right pinky. "Well, now, I've never heard of this to seal a pact, but if it will make you feel better, all right." Nicole noticed that he only had 4 fingers, but there was a small one on the end. He imitated Nicole, holding it out to her. She hooked her finger around his and shook on it. "So, lass, now that we're friends, tell me what's really troubling you." "Well, I know that I shouldn't be, but the truth is," she looked at the blackness all around her, "I'm scared of the dark." "The dark? Why is that it?" There's nothing to be scared of at all. Come on, I'll show you." And before Nicole could say a word, Bracken was leading her through the maze of tunnels until Nicole saw starlight up ahead. Then they popped out into a meadow. "See? I told you I could get you out of there. Now, let's have some fun." Nicole wasn't quite as scared now that Bracken was with her. "What do you do at night?" "Well, it all depends on who I see first. Look!" Bracken pointed to the center of the meadow where he spied a pair of raccoons. "Let me show you our favorite game. Watch this." He kneeled down on all fours and gave a soft, high-pitched cry. The pair of raccoons stopped in their tracks. Bracken lowered his head and waited. The first raccoon ran quickly towards Bracken. He pounced on Bracken's back, scrambled over his head, and then landed triumphantly in front of him. Then the second raccoon jumped over Bracken and leapt over the first raccoon. Nicole giggled as she recognized this game of leapfrog. Bracken and the raccoons now waited for her. Nicole ran towards Bracken, then jump, jump, jump. She cleared all 3 of them. Then Bracken started the game all over again. They played for quite some time. "I never knew nighttime could be so much fun. What else do you do?" "Well, let's see if the flower fairies are about tonight." Bracken roamed the meadow, whistling a sweet tune. As he walked through a patch of bracken, golden creatures like fireflies flitted around his head. Nicole heard sounds like tiny bells intermingling with shimmering lights. Then the fairies sprinkled Bracken with a golden dust that sparkled like stars, and he slowly rose into the air. "Why, Bracken, you're flying!" And so he was. He held his arms out like wings and created wide loops in the air. "Come on, Nicole, stand in the yellow flowers and let the fairies circle your head." Nicole did as she was told, trembling with excitement. The fairies giggled around her, throwing handfuls of fairy dust all over her. Nicole suddenly felt very light. "Ooh!" she gasped, as her toes lifted off the ground. She was a little wobbly at first, but soon her confidence grew, and she was doing backflips and somersaults. When a group of owls swept by, she and Bracken played follow the leader. But with the first rays of the morning sun, the flower fairies disappeared, along with their magic. Bracken and Nicole gently floated back into the tall grass of the meadow, exhausted from their nighttime adventure. "I guess your parents will be here soon once the mist has lifted," said Bracken. "I can't wait to tell them all about you," she said, smiling at him. "I don't feel scared of the dark anymore now that I see all the fun things there are to do at night." "Well, I'm glad of that, but I shall miss you." "Oh, I will miss you too, but pinky promises always last, even if we're far apart." "Friends?" she asked. "Friends," he said. Just then, a fairy horn sounded 3 times, and Nicole knew it was time to go. "Here's a little something to remember me by," he said, handing her a bouquet of yellow bracken. Nicole was so delighted that she leaned over and kissed him on the cheek. "Just a little something to remember me by." Then she ran down the meadow to the fairy dock where her parents had just landed. "Mommy, Daddy, I'm here!" she cried, leaping into their arms. "Oh, Nicky," said her mother, "we were so worried. When we didn't see you on the boat, we told the captain, but it was too late. Then the storm broke out, and the captain said we would have to wait till morning." Her mother held her close. "Why, what's this bump on your head?" "Oh, that. Ha! Well, I knocked my head against the rock wall when Bracken found me." "Who is Bracken?" asked her father. "Oh, he's my new friend. He's a troll. I'd followed the starfish path into a cave and down the tunnel. When I turned around to come back, the water was too high, so I couldn't get out. I was stuck on the ledge when he found me and took me way up there in the meadow. See?" And she pointed at the meadow. "A troll?" her father repeated quietly, frowning at her mother. "Oh, sure. He lives here. He taught me not to be scared of the dark any more. We played leapfrog with the raccoons and flew around the meadow with the owls. Of course, that was only after the flower fairies sprinkled us with fairy dust. It was wonderful." "Flower fairies?" her father repeated. "Well, that sounds like a wonderful adventure, Nicky," said her mother, winking at her father. "We're just glad you're safe and back with us. We need to get on board now." "Okay," said Nicole as she followed her parents back onto the boat and up to the observation deck. She looked up at the high hills towards the meadow. Bracken stood waving at her. "Goodbye, Bracken. Friends forever," she shouted. He grinned, then raised his hand in agreement. "Who is she yelling at?" whispered her father. Her mother shrugged her shoulders. "I'm not sure." Nicole waved the flowers at Bracken, and he smiled. But her parents were puzzled, for when they looked up at the meadow, they hadn't seen a thing.